Namaste. That means basically I bow to the divine within you, as Howard, you remember when you were in Kathmandu. Now, first of all, thank you very much for, in a time like this, in a pandemic which is hitting everybody, especially us dentists, in a massive way. One of the most affected of all the profession, I think, is dentistry. And um, the we have been badly hit, and it's our team suddenly find ourselves in complete uncertainty and dilemma, and the guidelines and protocols seem to be coming from all over the world, but most of them lack unified approach. There is not full confidence in it in a lot of things. Scores of webinars, publications have surfaced. Again, they also lack some evidence and definiteness again there. We are dealing with a virus basically that, I mean, it does not segregate caste, creed, religion, borders, rich or poor. After all, it's a microbe which is everywhere. And as professionals, we dentists sometimes feel lonely, especially in a country like ours where we think that this is just happening to us and the whole world may be working, but a lot of dentists feel like that. But yes, we are divided by geography, economy, but as a dentist, our religion is dentistry, and after all, and our patients are our gods, after all, right? So we thought let's because of this confusion, this pandemonium. Let me call it. My name is Pande, but pandemonium. Everything's happening. So it's an attempt to actually unify the world of dentistry to help one another to understand the unique challenges that we have globally. At the same time, make each of us dentists around the world feel that we are not alone. And what an opportunity we have here with Howard, you from USA and Agim from Australia, and in between UK, India, and Nepal. In between, the entire world is covered. The rich and poor, and the affluent and economy. Everything is covered as a whole. How to survive, how to go forward in the days to come. I'm sure together we shall ensure dentistry's bright and better future ahead, and I think we'll achieve that. We are, of course, always trying to ensure our patients, our staffs, and our own safety, along with, mind you, saving the surrounding environment, because a lot of disposables, as it is, dentistry is using, is causing bigger problem with the pollution as well. So together, let's get our dental engines restarted for the better future. Now, let me welcome some of the finest private practitioners from all around the globe to this August gathering today. Dr. Farran, we are absolutely honored, and namaste once again by thank you for coming in here. You have been at a center stage of shaping dentistry in the 21st century, I feel. And for me personally, oh my God, that dental town in 1999, 2000, that's what guided my practice. That's where things went, and scores of millions of dentists all around the world. I think that's where we are at. Yeah, you are the one who got us in the tech world, and look what's happening now. Everybody is getting into Zoom and technology, and things are really going, I think, as you envisioned. And thank you for that once again. With so many books you've written, articles, videos, you are the acclaimed global leader that we really look up to, and it's an honor, absolute honor, to have you here among us today. Thank you so much. And the first question I'm going to ask you first, so we've got a few questions here, and we'll then discuss. So can you update us on what's happening in your country, and how do you see globally? What's your message? What's happening in surrounding your area?
Well, I mean, I graduated from high school in 1980, which is when AIDS came out. And I mean, so we saw the evolving argument. At first it was gay cancer, and it took a long time, but we made all these incremental improvements. In 1980, when I was still in Wichita, Kansas, many of the dentists just still didn't wear gloves or masks. A lot of them still stood up. They had cuspidors. And when HIV came out, it just looks like a complete, like I'm seeing this rodeo for the second time. I remember everybody was afraid. People would say, well, if this man has AIDS and goes to the restaurant and drinks out of a glass, you're not going to autoclave that glass. You're just going to put it in a dishwasher. The virus wasn't killed, and it was pandemonium. And we made a lot of incremental improvements. Like even on these international flights, you hear people talking about, well, they're recirculating the air. They stopped that after SARS-1. All the new airplanes don't recirculate the air; they throw it out. So we've been fighting viruses my entire career, and HIV was no different. I remember the first 5 years that I had a dental office, every third patient would say, Dr. Farran, do you sterilize your drills? Because I don't want to catch AIDS. And I would say, well, AIDS is a sexually transmitted disease, and I have you scheduled for a filling. I'm confused. What were you planning on doing today? And so this is another external shock. And look at a shock. Look at the generation before us with World War II, when you woke up and you were invaded by another country. Well, I would much rather be invaded by a virus than the Japanese in World War II. But look at the response when that war broke out. Look at all the money that was poured into military and boats and ships and satellites and all that kind of stuff. And what's going to be great about this virus is it's going to make the 7.5 billion people realize, oh, wait a minute, we don't have time to fight each other. We got to fight another species. We got to fight something that's not even technically a life form. We got to fight a virus, which I have to remind you was the first thing that came out of, you have math, applied math is physics, applied physics is chemistry. What got us out of chemistry to start biology was a self-replicating mechanism, which is a virus. So they were here before any of us. Our biosphere is only about 500 million years old, and humans only showed up the last million. So these viruses have always been here. They've already found 500 different strains of this and just a single bat alone. So this is going to be a shock, but we're prepared for it. We've gone through HIV, which went on to kill 36 million people. If anybody is out there telling you how this is going to play out, they're just making stuff up. It'd be like predicting the stock market. You don't know what the stock market's going to be at in a day, a week, a year. You don't know where this virus is going to be. But it is, I think it's actually the first virus that's gone viral, because 2 years ago in the United States, we had a flu season that killed 70,000 people. And I swear it didn't even make the news. And we're just back to 70,000 with this one in the United States. Of course, that all happened in just a couple of months. But, it looks like it's a 98% chance that you're going to survive this. And so macroeconomically, you're seeing a lot of fear. And one of the things that's really bizarre about this is when there was a coronavirus that hit the United States in 2012, just 8 years ago, and it killed 38 million lives. But that didn't make the newspaper because they were pigs. And, you don't make the newspaper when you're a pig. You got to be a human to make the newspaper. These things happen, and we didn't build up our infrastructure. And now the whole world is looking at this virus. I think it's going to pull the whole world together. I think you're going to have billions of dollars a month invested in R&D research, and they are going to get to the bottom of this. I'm not optimistic about a vaccine because I'm old. I mean, you can tease children and they don't even know you're teasing them, but you can't tease people in college and then have them forget it. But when I was in dental school, the vaccine for dental decay for Streptococcus mutans was right around the corner. Well, 32 years later, there's no sign of it. The vaccine for P. gingivalis and HIV and they've been trying to come out with a vaccine for the common cold since 1960. So I don't think it's prudent to be making decisions based on we're going to have this miracle drug in the fall or next year or whatever. So we're probably going to write out the whole pandemic. And the viral experts are saying that, you know, all the data they have from like 1700 to now, that these things are usually 24 months long. And it looks like for the poor countries, I got to be optimistic because they're so young. Like the median average age of North America is 39, whereas Africa, it's 19. And I'm just not seeing any evidence in North America that this is something hurting children and school. In fact, Sweden left their schools open. They're worried about the old people. And that is kind of where we're at, because when you scare all the old people, well, they're the ones that own all the companies. They're the ones that are making all the financial investments. They're the ones, there's probably about 10,000 people on Earth that control the shipping industry, business, airlines, and those 10,000 people, and I know the majority of them in dentistry, they're all hunkered down for their life. I mean, if you're a 70-year-old multi-gazillionaire Stan Bergman of Henry Schein, you're not going shopping in a mall. I mean, you know, he's so when you paralyze all the people pulling all the strings, I mean, man, we just stopped. And who knows how long it's going to pick back up, but but the good news is, being global around the world, you know, I've been to China, I've lectured there, I've lectured in your country, Nepal. I'm really surprised when I know where Agim is. He's actually on the bottom of the earth, and if you see him all of a sudden fly up, he just fell off the earth. Agim, is your chair bolted down?
Yeah, otherwise it slides off.
Yeah, I don't want you to fall off. I mean, it must be tough living on the bottom of the world. But so, you know, I think that China, Wuhan, where this whole thing, where we first heard of this, they're back on their feet. They're back to the dental office. We have dentists from China and Shenzhen, even the dean of the dental school in Wuhan. I mean, they're back. So they had about a 3-month, you know, severe shock, and America's in that 3-month shock, and you know, we've lost 70,000 souls, and that's just horrible. But we're under an umbrella of fear, and we just opened back up our office this week, and so we closed down on St. Patrick's Day, and we opened back up on Cinco de Mayo. I think that's pretty interesting. St. Patrick's Day is the big Irish celebration, and my family's Irish Catholic, and then we closed down on Cinco de Mayo. We're right next to Mexico, and the patients were coming back. And I talked to a gentleman last night that owns 33 dental offices in Arizona, and week 1, they were back to 50% of revenue. And so I have to tell you a couple of things. And Neil, please feel free to tell me to shut up or interrupt, or you know, because I could talk for 40 days and 40 nights, but basically, the first patient I saw was a 71-year-old lady who was very, very upset because right the day we closed, she broke her front tooth off. And you know, so when they're saying dentistry can only treat emergencies, well, if you told this 71-year-old lady that missing a front tooth was not an emergency, she probably would have just tried to slap you. I mean, she was so mad. She has been socially isolating, not for the fear of the virus, which she couldn't care less about. She just wanted her front tooth back. And that's one of the problems we're facing in dentistry, is that if you're a dentist in Arizona like me, you have the governor of Arizona saying this, the State Board of Dental Examiners saying this, the White House saying something different, the Centers for Disease Control, the World Health Organization, the United, you know, so there's so much information, misinformation, you know. So what I tell dentists is how you started. I loved going to Nepal. I loved learning about Hinduism and all the things. I mean, it was just fantastic. But I just try to treat other people like you want to be treated. And if that 71-year-old thinks it's a dental emergency, then it's a dental emergency. I mean, go to a hospital. Go out in the waiting room. What is the definition of an emergency? I mean, you have everything from I cut my finger to I got a fever to God knows what. I mean, the list is a mile long. But if a human being says this is an emergency, it's an emergency. I don't need a government agency to say, well, they need to have bleeding, swelling, tenderness, pus. Oh, shut up. You're not even a dentist. If people are going to come in, I think that 98% of Americans are not going to die from this. That's what the evidence looks like to me. And we could all be wrong because we don't know the future. Einstein would argue the future doesn't exist and the past doesn't exist. Only the present time exists. So we don't know where this is going, but it looks like it's a magnitude of scale of fear more than the reality that this is probably going to kill about 2% of the earth. And it's probably going to be a lot of really old people with underlying conditions of heart disease and diabetes and all that. And that's all a sorry shame. That doesn't make it any better or worse. No one wants to lose their grandparents. I'm crossing my fingers that my grandchildren don't want to lose me. What's the kitty up on Grandpa dying? Have they got any betting going on? I think it's up to $1,000. The Raya's 3 and she's doubling. She bet $1,000 Grandpa's dead by his birthday. So I think I think we just need to overcome the fear and realize that we're not going to live in a bubble. I mean, imagine you go into the doctor and they say, well, you have a disease and it's a 98% chance you're not going to die. Well, you should say, whew, that's a relief. I mean, me and Agim just want to hear that there's a 98% chance our hair will come back. And that's another thing. When I was in college, my biology teacher told me that that a pharmaceutical in Upjohn in Kalamazoo, Michigan, had just invented a drug, minoxidil, and it's going to cure male pattern baldness. Okay, 32 years later, how's that cure for male pattern baldness going? So don't bet on a vaccine or a miracle drug. You probably save a lot of money just going up and buying a magic crystal or something. But right now, what we need to do is we need to go back to work. And we need to use common sense, and we need to use our mask and our gloves, and we need to do things that make the patient feel safer. Like what we did is we put air purifiers in each room. I added a mask, a shield. I wear loops, and if I took off the side guides, I could clip on this plastic shield. So we got a mask. I'm wearing a disposable gown. I don't know, why. I mean, and that goes back to the HIV. I remember in 1987, the best idea for the Centers for Disease Control is that the dentist could no longer wear short sleeves or shorts. Well, we were in Arizona, and we all, it's 112 outside. We all wore white shorts and today's dental top. And everybody loved it. I mean, we were all in tennis shoes, shorts, and a t-shirt. And then the Centers for Disease Control said that because of AIDS, we have to wear long sleeve shirts and long sleeve pants. And all my staff is like, well, how do you catch AIDS from having shorts on? How do you catch AIDS from having, so there's so much fear and hysteria. If someone walks by with shorts on or long pants, is not going to determine whether or not you catch chlamydia or not. It's just not how they work. But I think I'm really optimistic that my friend who owns 33 offices in Arizona, they were back up to 50%. Our first day open, we had 11. So let me just go back to the market real quick. So, it's Nepal or Australia. It's a lot easier to define because, like, take Australia. I mean, there's not even 30 million people there, but the United States, I don't even like the term the United States because it's 330 million people, and you can't compare New York City to Alaska or Kansas to Miami or Phoenix. It's even the Federal Reserve treats the United States as 9 different economies flying under a single country. It's a very big country. So, at least half the country has no fear of this. That is a given. And politically, you could call them Trumpers, and he wants to open back up the society. And those guys will tell you, well, if I had to pick between destroying all the hospitals or destroying the entire U.S. economy, well, of course, don't we destroy the hospitals? I mean, what are you thinking? I mean, we have to go live another century or two where the society is going to keep going. And the healthcare people are burning bridges because they're saying, well, hey, our healthcare system, which already costs 17 cents of every dollar, when you look at the government entitlements of Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, I mean, there are economists that say healthcare consumes almost half the money, activity, and real estate and employees in America. And for them to tell everyone that, oh, well, you can't fly your airplane, you can't have a hotel, everyone else has to go bankrupt to save our hospital. And you say, why? And they say, well, we're not having enough ventilators. You say, well, if they put you on a ventilator, it's a 90% chance you're going to die. I mean, why are they fighting over a ventilator? They ought to be fighting over a pistol to shoot themselves before they get intubated with a ventilator. I mean, if I was given a choice, hey, do you want a ventilator or do you want to play Russian roulette for $1 million? I mean, I'm playing Russian roulette at that point. 90% odds is horrible. So there's been a lot of overreaction. There's been a lot of craziness, and we have no idea what's going to happen. But I know this much. If the whole world decides they're going to go in their house and lock the front door and not come out for 2 years, they're all going to starve to death and die. We already have meat shortages. And when I go to the grocery store, there's no meat. You can't do that. And you can't stop feeding the world because 2% are going to die. That's just not how it works if you were managing a herd of cattle or chicken or sheep. So when I like to listen to people. And I talk to every one of those 11 patients. I talk to my boys, like for instance, my 4 boys. None of them are social isolating. They think it's insane. I should be social isolating. And then there's my mother who's 82 and she's Catholic. So she thinks Jesus is looking out for her. So she didn't have a concern in the world. She's been going to all of her activities and she goes, so half of America is bored, broke, ran out of food, back to work. I was talking to a man at the gas station and he said, well, I got a stay-at-home wife with 3 kids. She told me if I'm not going to go back to work and get money for food and groceries, to not even come home. And then he started laughing. So we got to go back to work. We don't have, who's going to bail us out? Mars, Venus, Pluto? Who's going to come down and take care of 7.5 billion people while we all hide in the basement? We didn't hide when we were invaded from Japan or Germany. You don't hide. You just confront the problem at hand. And it's time to get past, the 5 stages of grief. I tell you, you have cancer. Well, at first it's shock, denial, and bargaining, anger. Then you finally accept it. And I think over 51% of America is in the acceptance stage. Okay, this sucks. We have a pandemic. The good news is, it's really bad if you're over 60, and it's not really bad for their children because that's how economics work. Look at dentistry. You have 10,000 orthodontists and you don't even have 100 guys who have practice limited to veneers and cosmetic dentistry on mom because everybody shovels money down to the kids first. Pediatric dentistry and orthodontics will always do better than geriatric dentistry. In fact, geriatric dentistry isn't even a specialty yet. And they don't want to make it a specialty because they figure by the time they make it a specialty, all the patients will be dead. And so this is about, the children, and this virus is sparing the children. And so we have an air filter, we're wearing gowns, we have a face shield, we're giving the perception, satisfaction equals perception of what I'm perceiving minus what I expected. And all they want to expect is that they believe that you're on it, that you're aware of the coronavirus. How could you not be aware of it? I mean, where are you at right now where you're not aware of the coronavirus? So when they physically see that you're adapting, that you're changing, that you've done this, they're going to start feeling safer. And then, so right now, 50% of America, I can't speak for Australia because number one, they're all upside down. It's, you're talking to their feet and their heads at the other end. I mean, it's very confusing. But I can speak for, North America. And I think North America, 50% of the people, they're done with this thing. They're back out. And then the other half is going to be in fear. And I think the way you eliminate their fear is testing. When they get tested and they have antibodies to COVID-19, they feel invincible. And it doesn't matter if that means they can or can't get reinfected. I mean, you hear some people saying, well, we don't have any proof that you can't get reinfected. Then you read another study, oh, we're treating people that donated plasma that had antibodies to COVID-19, and we're using that as antibody therapy with fantastic results. So it just depends on the individual. Half are fearless, including my mother and all 4 of my boys. And the older people, like I got tested yesterday. I haven't checked my results yet. They said it'd take 1 to 3 days. But if I have antibodies to COVID-19, well, I mean, I'm not going to socially isolate. I mean, I'd go volunteer in a nursing home. I mean, you know, so.
Thank you.
The problem I've got, like, exactly what you said, is all this isolation that's been happening. Like, we went back to level 1 as of tonight. So in dentistry level 1, we can pretty much do whatever we want to do. But in the meantime, since March the 24th, so many practices are finding that they've got no money, they've lost income, they're struggling. I know in England, they're really struggling. So I think that's the problem, is dentistry, a lot of businesses are going to completely struggle because of 1 or 2 months of being closed down. And so starting up again will be the hardest thing to do, especially if you've got a lot of debt, and especially if you've, if you've got debt, you've got no cash. So I think that's the problem, because practices like ours, we're not in a lot of debt. We've got cash. We've started marketing our practice again. So, and we're targeting our clients that we're marketing to as well. And yeah, so under level 2 restrictions, we were down to about 20%. But this week, so the first week of May, we made 50% of what we made in all of April. So I think that's the problem. I agree with everything you're saying, but this virus is going to ruin a lot of businesses in the meantime.
I think you're right, because we're talking about different funding schemes and economic schemes in different countries. So I've got figures here for the UK, and I can tell you that a lot of the private practices here in the UK are struggling because we get no government support. So what happens in the UK is you're either NHS, which is government backed, or you're private. The problem is that there are only few practitioners that are purely private like myself, and we don't get any support from the government for that. The other practices that receive support for the NHS component only, because the majority of those practices are actually mixed practices. They have an element of NHS, an element of private, depending on what the variation is in terms of the split ratio. But there's so much money that's actually missing here in the UK, because the UK generates something like about 7.1 billion, I remember, 2017 to 2018, 7.1 billion pounds of revenue through dentistry. And over half of that since 2012 has been, over 50% of it has come from the private sector. So what's happening now is that all practices since 25th of April have been instructed by the CDO to stop face-to-face contact, which essentially means that we have no routine dental care. So all practices literally stopped. Everything was then centralized to about 264 urgent dental care hubs, which are practices which are sponsored by the NHS to deal with COVID patients. They're either hot patients that COVID-19 positive, or self-isolating patients needing urgent emergency care, or they're cold centers where they don't have the signs and symptoms, but they are potentially COVID-19 patients. So you have to go through 2 levels of that. So your own practice will then, first of all, triage the patients and give them, the most we can do basically is give them AAA treatment, which is advice, analgesia, or antibiotics. And then if they need any further treatment, they go on to a second level where they will then be assessed at hubs. And then if they need treatment, they'll then be referred to the urgent dental care centers. Now, the problem is that there are so many patients that need treatment, and there are so many patients in the UK at the moment that are currently suffering because there are no dentists to treat them, whether they be routine patients or whether they be patients who have no dental practice or dentist routinely anyway. And they're the ones that are the ones that are turning up to many of these hubs with the really severe problems, because they're essentially dentally neglected patients through their own fault, essentially. But the point is that we have very little income coming in. And so the BDA did a study recently which showed that of all the practices surveyed, over 70% of them thought that they would not survive past 3 months at most if this shutdown continued. That's within 3 months, these practices would either collapse, or they would have to go into liquidation, or they'd have to close up. Basically, they just wouldn't survive. And that means that what's left of the NHS services that are supported by the government would then be inundated. So essentially, we're talking about what you first of all talked about, Howard, which is an uncoordinated response. So the UK dentists are essentially left confused in terms of what advice they're being given. Because what I wanted to do was actually ask you, who your regulators are. You see, the UK is very heavily regulated. It's regulated, and we're instructed by the Chief Dental Officer, the Chief Dental Officer of England, and then there's a representative for the Northern Ireland, Wales, and Scotland as well. But we have to listen to what the Chief Dental Officer says. And the other bodies that regulate us are the Care Quality Commission, which looks at everything from the way that we operate our practices, sterilisation procedures, etc. They can close us down. The General Dental Council that regulate us as our official regulators and that we're licensed to, and then also our indemnity indemnifiers. And all three of these bodies have essentially said that they would back the CDO's advice, which is basically stop until further notice. Now, how long is further notice? Because further notice, as it goes longer and longer into this lockdown, means that we are becoming more and more desperate for an income to support the business. And again, you've got a relatively buoyant business like I have, but I can't imagine that I can survive without really feeling a pinch after the next 3 months, or within the 3 months of shutdown. So that's really what's happening in terms of the UK, that the economic pressure on dental practices, and hence the economic pressure on dental services and the patients that are suffering, is huge, because we don't actually have scientific evidence to say we can shut down now. If you think about it, if we're doing non-aerosol generating procedures, because we discussed this earlier on, if we had to do emergency services, every single practice in the UK could open up tomorrow. And they would just be sensible. Non-COVID-19 patients needing emergency dental care, we would just have everything that you've got at the moment, gowns, face masks, etc. And then we could at least see emergency patients with non-aerosol generating procedures and still be compliant.
Thank you, Dr. Anil. That is Dr. Anil Shrestha from Wimpole Street. He's got a practice. He's a private specialist prosthodontist from UK. He's also examiner for Royal College of Surgeons and scores of other things. And he's a dear. He's a Nepali by he was born here, but he's settled there. So. And it's great to have you here, and that's a very good insight. At the same time, Dr. Agim Hymer, who's been a very passionate, he's helped us so much in building up Nepalese dentistry in the past so many years, and it was great to hear Agim as well. He's from Melbourne, Australia, and Australia is actually second their levels. Can you, Agim, can you give us a bit on what do you mean by levels for the benefit of the dentist?
Yeah, in Australia, I suppose we've had a lot of government. The government's just telling us what to do, and everyone seems to be following it. Maybe because we get heavy fines, or businesses get heavy fines, so people have just been self-isolating, and because we're an island as well, that we've been able to control the virus coming into the country. So we've had a lot of benefits that have helped us by being able to just shut all the borders. But it's like my wife always says, that no one knows a single COVID patient, and yet we all know businesses that have been completely destroyed by this. And the ones that will survive it are the ones that, as I said before, don't have little debt and have cash flow. So the ADA, the Australian Dental Association, they've been supporting us non-stop. They have been absolutely excellent by producing a lot of documents. They've classified it as to different levels, like level 1, which we've just been allowed to enter. We can finally do hygiene again, which is great. So we can all get our teeth cleaned. And we all know that hygiene's the engine room of the practice. When we're at level 2, we could produce aerosols, but under rubber dam, which is, for me, I know a lot of people love their rubber dam, but I can't stand doing all that stuff under rubber dam, especially when you've got a CEREC machine. But doing level 2 dentistry, we were able to get ourselves up to roughly around about the 20 to 30% of what we normally did. And that's great, but that's really just covering expenses. So level 3 was pretty much, we can't do much at all, just emergency extractions, writing scripts, just getting people out of pain. So everything got segregated into different levels. But listening to different people, it seems like our dental association has been totally supportive of us. They've worked with the government, because if they didn't do that, the government would have just done what they've done in England and just said, well, you know, fend for yourself, we'll just shut you down. So, yeah, so it seems like our dental association has been excellent.
So that's exactly the point I'm making again. Okay? Now, the UK is not unique in having a confused message, which is why I think we have so much to learn from the Australians, Canada, New Zealand, where there has been a coordinated government response with the governing bodies for dentistry. You see, everything that you need to know comes through the ADA website. Patients realize it, dentists realize it, you have to obey it. For us, we're so heavily regulated here, but we have a confused message. We don't know whether we're listening to Public Health England, the CDO, CQC, the GMC, the GDC, because they all have slightly different messages. All we're getting now, as we're starting to collate the data, is that they're all supporting the CDO's advice. The CDO has been under a lot of pressure to produce a relatively late response, it could be argued, but you know, it's a difficult job. And she's been seconded to essentially help develop the strategy for the chief medical officer, who then advises the government, etc. So we've had a confused message at best, and we've had no guidance, to the point where, interestingly enough, when we first heard from the CDO, we realized that essentially private dentists in the UK were told essentially, yeah, you fend for yourself. The urgent dental centres, the UDCs, are designed for NHS patients. If you want to send patients there, perhaps buddy up with local NHS practice. And remember, over 50% of all of the income, which is pretty much all of the treatments, comes from private dentistry in the UK. So the interesting thing is, some very proactive guys. I mean, dentistry is a great profession here in the UK. Everyone pretty much knows each other, especially through social media and things. And some very proactive guys, very experienced and energetic people like Zaki Kanan, Jason Smithson, Bertie Napier, Dominic Ahuli. Within 2 weeks, we developed the British Association of Private Dentistry. Within 2 weeks, over 8,000 members, and it's still growing. And they produced a position paper on essentially what we're talking about now. But we've had to go to this situation to be able to find somebody that would represent us as dentists. And hopefully we will now be able to, as this develops as an association and as we have momentum and leverage, develop a kind of a pressure group to ensure that the private dentists in the UK, which are so instrumental to ensure that the NHS doesn't get overloaded, actually has a voice in the way that government policy is guided over the next few weeks especially. So hopefully we'll learn a few lessons from you, Agim, and that's why I'm interested to hear what the Australians have to say.
Yeah, thank you, Anil, for that. Now I'd like to go on to our buddy from India. He is Dr. Abhay Lamba, and he's been in practice also for around 30 years, 27, 28 years, and he's based in near Delhi. He's also instrumental in making Indian dental association protocol for the COVID-19 and all that. See, I mean, I think Nepalese perspective and Indian perspective is slightly different, basically because of the, I guess, our health mechanism that is so short falling in a lot of regards. Like suppose COVID-19 tomorrow hits us like Nepal, I mean, God forbid, right now we have 101 cases and most of them with mild symptoms and nobody's dead yet. Let's hope that stays that way. But if it hits in a bigger or larger number, our healthcare system cannot cope with it. And I think that that's the biggest worry we have. And just even if it's just 2% of the population, but those 2% dying here and there without proper care would be a big dilemma for us. I think India also with 1.3 and unofficially 1.8 billion. Dr. Lamba was telling me. I think I would like to call upon Dr. Lamba now to explain Indian scenario. Please unmute.
Hi. Now, thanks for inviting me, Neil, and such a elite group to present my views about Indian scenario. If it is confused in UK, it is chaos in India. And yes, we are 1.3 billion people here, and still we are not in a stage where we can do a complete or partial testing there or very aggressive testing for COVID-19 for the population here. And if I look at the dental scenario here, average dentist in India, average salary of Indian is about 4,000 US dollars. So that's a very small amount. So the government, for a government, is not a big revenue generating industry. Nearly about, say, if I look at among the dentistry in India, nearly about 24% to 17 to 24%, they really pay income tax. So to come into the bracket of tax-paying bracket is for India is very low. It's not a very well-paying job in India. And yes, definitely the majority of Indian population get their dental treatment done at the private sector. As the government sector is free, like NHS population, something same like a kind of model, which has been highly subsidized for the majority of the population here in India. But as it is highly subsidized, the facilities there is also very much limited there. Now, regarding the economics here, we are hard pressed. We are being sent to fight war with hardly any support and guidelines, and we are fending for ourselves here. And we have to pay salary from our pocket. Everything we have to pay from our pocket. There's no support system as such, because the government of India has to support a large population of, how to say it, non-tax paying, highly subsidized population here. So they are hard pressed about a lot of things. And India is a complex society, not easy to understand. I think you need a lot of debates to understand what is happening here. That's the best part of it, and that's the worst part of Indian population here. Now, if I look at it, really thanks to Dr. Howard to present us the vaccination for fear. And that fear vaccination, we need it today. And you're right, we are a very young country, not as young as African countries. We are 29 mean average in India. So though still we are in quite young Indians, and I think more than 50% of Indian population is under or very young, so less than 20 years. So we are not expecting many people or percentage of population to die with this. And as such, today present scenario, we are nearly 60,000 people are not exactly, less than 60,000 people who are active, and less than 2,000 people who has come to this disease, with a lot of underlying, hardly young population, mostly population which come to this disease. Infection is senior citizens or now. To look at it, we do not expect, but the fear, we are God-fearing country, okay? And we fear of everything. And yes, we face things on front, but the dentistry has not been supported. Supreme Court is saying something, They have put a legislation there, no aerosol producing medical healthcare sector to work, like ENT surgeons and ophthalmologists and dentists. They all fall into the same line. Though we have a different kind of aerosol producing industry, but we have put it there. Somebody who is not a dentist, he's been trying to save or whatever, represent India in a dentist in Supreme Court. And this the mess up happened. And now the civil administration also sticking to the law that you are not supposed to open it. And certain societies like Indian Endodontic Society and Indian Prosthodontic Society, they have come up with some guidelines to divide somewhat. Dr. Agim has already said level 1, level 2, level 3. I am sure it's the kind of these protocols being dependent on CDC from America, some from UK, some from Australia, mainly from Australia. And we also doing kind of this, except it's not accepted as level 1, 2, 3, 4. As he said, it's unofficial. It's not been stamped by the Indian government. They said, okay, you can attend to very vaguely dental emergencies, which is bleeding, swelling, XYZ. So like how to recognize what is emergency. It's a dentist who can. Now, if some endodontist, it's like in India, endodontist is endodontist. Okay, he is not going to talk about it toto as a dentist. Prosthodontists will have their own society, they will only talk about. So regarding that, general dentist, we have IDA and we have just formulated some guideline, but still not yet implemented by the Indian government. So that's the lack of support we are having from the government, whereas in Australia, the government is working with the Dental Society or Dental Association of Australian Dentists. So this is looking a bit grim, and that has a big impact, financially impact on especially the private dentistry, because unlike as Dr. Anil has said that they have 50% of the revenue generated in UK is from private dentistry. I would look at the other way. I think in India is nearly 95% plus revenue comes from the private dentistry, because government sector doesn't produce any revenue for the government. It's where it's been spent there. There's no revenue coming from the government sector to the Indian government. So that means we are the very big segment of healthcare which provides revenue to government. Even if it's 17 to 24%, that's still a big amount to the Indian government as compared to other sectors. Now, here the sector has been kindly, obviously completely overlooked. And as you said, in the next 3 months, if it's continue, it's going to completely collapse. Majority of our shops, offices have to shut down because, as you said, and we are in a very young country. So we have a very young dental population, dentist population, and they have taken loans to start their practices. And after 3 months of moratorium, which Indian government has given that benefit to them, but then they still have to pay the interest rate, which is between 10% to 12%. So that's really going to be really heavy if it's a 5-year loan. So end of the 5 years, it's going to become a big amount. So that financial aspect is going to kill the young dentists to close down and look for another job. And yes, we have a lot of employment here. We can work. But yes, as Howard said, if we close our shop in fear, we're going to starve. And we have a lot of mouths to feed in India. So that's, I think with this group, we learned something and represent our country in the right way. Now, another part was that I would just want to finish it off, that the representation to Indian government there, the policymakers, is very poorly represented. Majority of the people who are representing there as representative of Indian dentists are either academicians or retired dentists who has no interest as such in the active dentistry, which is happening in India. So that's the lost part. But everything is not lost. We have very innovative population in India. A lot of doctors are coming with a lot of studies, and ICMR is showing slowly interest that governing body for research in India, Indian Council for Medical Research, they are showing some now inclination towards dental research work. And more hopefully in few months, we are going to be online as soon as the fear because hunger is a bigger fear in India than COVID, I think. And yes, sorry to say, yesterday they opened the liquor shops in India. I think we have generated more revenue than more of the countries in India in one day. Total revenue what they make in one day from liquor sale. So Indians are not that poor, but yes, the money is not in government hand. It's more in the cash with the people. And so hopefully Indian will survive with the little guidance, what is happening all over the world. And once we'll have this vaccine completely, the fear vaccine, the population get vaccinated with it. More fast they get vaccinated with, to get out of the fear, I think faster we'll be on our foot. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lamba. Thank you for that. I'll come back to Dr. Farran. So let's say for a young dentist in Kathmandu who's trying to, do his, usually dentists here earn around $500 a month. $400 or $500 a month. That's how much they earn. So they're running their practice at the same time, rent and all those things. What would your message be? How do they need to, like, protection wise? What will be your some recommendations for these young dentists who are trying to cope with this problem?
You're asking me?
Yes, Dr. Howard.
Well, can I comment a couple of? I'll go to your question, but a comment on a couple of things is history always repeats itself, and you got to switch out the coronavirus for being attacked by a war. I mean, when you go back to England, Winston Churchill was screaming and beating his drums for years about the German buildup, but they were feared. They didn't want to believe it was happening, and then when it started to happen, they realized that 380,000 people were going to have to die to fight this virus. Right now, I kind of get annoyed listening to rich dentists in rich countries talk about how this is going to impact them when the United Nations is saying that 831 million humans right now are in hunger and 135 million are looking at starvation to death in response to COVID. So when everybody runs in and hides because 2% are going to die, you're going to kill more people through starvation. And to hear all these rich country leaders telling, Brazil and India and Pakistan to shut down and socially isolate, they're just like, okay, our people work all day long to get paid at the end of that day to go buy food to eat today. And I don't really care about a rich dentist in England. I'm worried about 835 million humans starving, and the United Nations saying 135 million will probably starve completely to death. And we're doing all of this for a 2% mortality rate. And again, not the babies, not my 6 grandchildren, but grandpa. And people sit there and they just have to get their head around the fact that it is what it is. So I would tell that young kid, if he was, again, I can only speak for the United States from what this is where I was born and raised, and I can't speak as an expert on Brazil. I've lectured in 50 countries several times, and I have friends like you in all of them, and I'm so blessed with that. But the bottom line is 50% of America is more concerned about running out of food and water and electricity. And what they don't realize is that this is only 2 months old, and the United States has already lost 30 million jobs. So that is, right now, we're at 25% unemployment. Now, a lot of people are going to say, Howard, on Bloomberg, they just said it was 16.7. Yeah, but every single Federal Reserve chairman said it was underreported. So when you have the whole board saying it's underreported, because I might be thinking I'm going to go back to that job. So now let's look at opening back up the economy. And let's say I had a restaurant. Well, in order to open back up my restaurant, I owe 2 months rent, 2 months electric, 2 months this. And I already spent all of my personal savings because I didn't have any money for 2 months. So they don't have money to start back up. Look at these airlines. Their revenue's down 95% at airlines, Disneyland, hotel, San Diego. Phoenix, the flights are down 95%. So you're going to throw us in to a complete depression, And then when the government says, okay, it's over, everybody go back to work, that's not how it's work. If I can't pay my rent, then my landlord doesn't get the rent. What does he have to do? A complete bankruptcy, file against? I mean, this could be a legal nightmare for years. So I think that you already are seeing the signs of, it looks like pre-World War II. I mean, yesterday you had the governor of Nebraska. We're out of meat. When I go to the meat store, there's no meat. So the governor, the government wanted to shut down the meat packing plant. And the governor of Nebraska said, we can't. We sell $1 billion of meat a year. What are these people going to eat? Yeah, someone's going to die in the meat packing plant, and it's horrible. But they did this in World War II. I mean, when they did D-Day with the British landing on French, I mean, everyone knew a lot of people were going to die, and a quarter of them died that day. Another quarter died the next month, and another quarter never came home. Only 1 in 4 of those boys ever came back home. It's horrible. It's horrible. But what your governments are trying to do is take a pandemic and turn it into an economic pandemonium, depression, and it just, you can't have your cake and eat it too. So if everybody has decided they're going to go live in their basement for 2 years, I wouldn't take a ventilator. I'd take a gun, because after about 3 days of no potato chips and beer for me, I'd be done. And we just have to go back out there and realize that you have a 98% chance you're going to beat this thing. And if you're not, and you already see the governor of Arizona, the ASU, where I'm an alumni, I got my MBA from ASU. They have a team of volunteer epidemiologists that are showing you the curve and how to flatten the curve and all that. He told the volunteers to quit volunteering and go home, and the government's not going to work with them anymore, because I mean, it's like reconnaissance on Nazi Germany during World War II. It's all bad news, but it's not going to change anything. We have to go back to work. So I would tell that young person starting up that, number one, if you're from the COVID class of 2020, you just walked out of school, $400,000 in debt. There's a lot of pent-up demand for dentistry, because I've noticed that during the shutdown, people didn't stop drinking sugar and eating candy and chocolate and started brushing and flossing. In fact, it was the opposite. Everybody I know gained 10 pounds except for me. I was lucky enough to gain 20. But they're just eating. Those little cavities are turning into root canals, and 50% don't care, including all 4 of my 4 boys and my 82-year-old mother. Greg was telling me last night, he goes, God, I wish I could just go someplace to get my teeth cleaned. Look, Dad. And if you said, oh, well, all the dentists are scared and they're hiding in the basement, I mean, he just doesn't get it. So you cannot shut down and socially isolate and save everyone for 2 years, or you're going to lose everything you've gained in the last century. It'll be a full depression. So we're past that. So now we're going to go back to work, and we're going to risk a 2% chance of succumbing to this. And it's not going to be someone young and healthy like me. It's going to be someone old like Agim. I mean, look at him. I mean, he's old. If I was a virus, I know I could take out him instead of Neil or Anil. But it's only going to get the old guys like Agim, not the young, fertile guys like me. And just treat it like you treated HIV all through the 80s and the 90s. And, and just step up, give the perception. And then what I would do for marketing is this. Half the people are done with this. They don't believe in it. It's a hoax, whatever. Okay. So half the dental business is there. And opening up the first week of April, again, the dental offices, all the dental offices that I talk to are already back to 50% of production in just a week. That's amazing. But it shows you the other half of America. There's 2 Americas in dentistry. I'm only talking about dentistry. I'm not talking about the other economic sectors, but half the people in dentistry always went to the cost leader, the lowest cost, your Walmart, your Costco, your Southwest Airlines, my insurance. So half only shopped on price. And if I could get my tooth fixed with Neil for $1 and Agim would cost $2 and Anil would cost $3, I'm going to the $1 man. That's half of America. And those seem like to be the half that's not scared and ready to go back. The other half was value added. And they wanted someone from the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry or diplomat in implantology. And I have a bunch of initials behind my name. I got a diplomat and this and MAGD, but I condensed them all into just 3 initials, BFD. And, you know, but now the new BFD is not the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, but the American Academy of Disease Control Dentistry. And that's going to last for about 2 years until the pandemic's gone. And it'll start going away as each person tests positive to the antibody and they've already run into it. Because 80% of the infections are pretty much non-symptomatic. And as soon as you take away that and say, oh, you've already had it and lived, well, then they're fearless and they're back in. But that 2-year lapse, I mean, right now, you got 30 million unemployed Americans. That's technically, you know, the only difference between a recession and a depression is length of time. And, you know, if it comes down and bounces back up, it's a V shape. If it comes down, lags and back up, it's a U shape. And there's no sign, nobody knows what it's going to do. I mean, you can't ask Warren Buffett where the stock market's going to be tomorrow, and he's the smartest guy on the block with Wall Street. So we just don't know, but we do know this. If we all run down in the basement and hide, we're going to have 10 people starve to death for every person that died of COVID-19. And the person that died of COVID-19 is going to be an old grandpa like me with liver spots. And the people starving to death are going to be women and children of very young ages. So there's no decision here. Just like there was no decision about not addressing Imperial Japan and Germany during World War II. It's a horrible situation, but you have to face it. And what I love about this situation is it's going to bring the species together. I mean, we're one species, and we got to go fight viruses and bats. And when people are getting mad at China for having a bat, remember the Spanish influenza started where I was born in Kansas. Zoonotic transfer was from a pig to a human. So, okay, so someone was playing with a bat. Well, I come from a long line of people that eat pigs. And you know, you could blame us for the entire Spanish influenza. So it's just a matter of, I would just go in there and like always, I would know your numbers. I would know your cost if you're going to have an increase in cost in PPE. So I want to address one thing totally off the subject, but you know, when everything was going good, you know, in economics, you do a volume discount. So if Neil buys 1 bottled water and Agim buys 10, well, Agim should get a better deal because it's a volume discount. So a lot of dentists in England and Australia, they've all signed up for these insurance plans that were based on volume discount. If I'm going to advertise and I'm going to get a patient and charge $1 for a filling, but you promise me you'll give me 10 patients, well, I'll do those 10 for 60 cents on the dollar because the volume, you can make money. The game of volume is dead. It's gone. I mean, if you're still looking at that game, I call everything BC and AC. Remember when it was BC before Christ, AD after his death? I know that's not the exact translation. Well, now it's BC before Corona and AC after Corona. And BC was a game of volume, the NIH, insurance plans, PPOs. That is it's so dead, it's dead. And now, until this is over, it's no longer a game of volume. So I'm not going to listen to the NIH. I'm not going to listen to the government. I mean, for me, I never have anyway. I mean, it's just my modus operandi. I just assume that every law ever written was because some millionaire bribed a politician and got it passed by the government, and the government is the mob, and they can enforce this because they can kidnap you and put you in a cage and kill you. So, you know, to say the government solution, the government is the mob. I mean, if you have a romantic love affair with the mob, you probably like all those mafia movies like, you know, The Godfather 1, 2, and 3. You know, if you're into that, whatever, but I'm not into it. And what I would do is I would just, it's not a game of volume. I got to make you feel safe. So I'm not going to go in here and numb someone up, and then jump in this room and prep a crown, and then go over here and do a hygiene check, then come back over here. No, you're not going to run 4 rooms. It's no longer volume. It's one room. I'm going to walk in there looking like Neil Armstrong when he landed on the moon with my face shield and my mask and my gloves. And I'm going to go in that room, and maybe it'll be negative pressure. We put the doors on our rooms. We have the air filter. We have all this extra stuff to do everything we can, because we're really trying to make sure that this disease, which has a 98% success rate, 98% chance nothing will happen. But that 2%, we're doing all this extra stuff, but we're going to walk in that room, and that's when we're going to take the x-rays. If you need a cleaning, we're just going to do the whole thing. And I know people in Arizona that before the pandemic, they had a game of volume and they had about 75% overhead. Now they're just seeing emergencies with one employee, and they go in there and Agim's got a toothache. So they do a root canal, build up CEREC crown while they're in the room. They did your cleaning too and your bite wings and did a filling. The whole appointment was 3 hours, and they charge you $2,500 on your credit card. And now they're saying, I saw 2 patients yesterday. I did $5,000, and I didn't even have $1,000 of overhead. And so it's just, it's no longer a game ball. And by the way, I just want to say one thing to Anil on the, your website on the British Dental Association. I started Dental Town 5 years before Facebook, and Facebook and Twitter and all, they're all last in, first out, which is great. It's a fun read. I love Twitter. All the people that own dental companies are on LinkedIn and Twitter. And, but the last in, first out is LIFO is not a way to be organized. The message board format, if you go to any scientific institution studying virology, NASA, they all use the message board format. And I have programmed Dental Town for 20 years with 5 programmers. If you guys want an index format that you own it yourself, I will cut and paste and copy a British Dental Town, whatever. But I don't know if you can organize 8,000 dentists on a last in, first out, people taking screenshots, reposting the same message. It's just a cluster. Whereas an index board, it's all organized. And you can do a search for like MB2 and pull up all the threads for MB2. So if anybody out there needs something they can own, because YouTube can take down your videos, Facebook is mostly there to serve you up ads. And when you post on Facebook, only 6% of those posts are seen by your followers, because think of the simple math. Every year they double the number of ads. So if you're on it for an hour this year, next year you're going to see twice as many ads. The next year, twice again. The next year, twice again. I mean, it's logarithmic growth. So if you need a non-advertising index form like Dental Town, but for your own country, just send me an email, howard@dentaltown.com, and we will actually cut and paste you a damn Dental Town, because that 500,000 lines of code, I can cut it, paste it, host it, and off on your way, because these are strange times and we're here to help. But I think it's the same thing as war. I'm so glad that this wasn't an invasion, because I always figured in my lifetime we would eventually get invaded by Australia. And I've been fearing this my whole life, and I'm glad it was a bat and not Australia. I'm glad all the humans are on the same team. Let Team Sapien, and we're the only Homo left. I mean, we don't have Homo Neanderthal. We don't have Homo Denisovan. Where is Homo habilis? Where are all the other homos? We're the last remaining Homo. That's why when people say Homo sapien, I'm like, well, is there a Homo something else? I'm pretty sure it's just sapien, and it's just us, and it's us against the world. And I also hope that this will make you think about the cosmos, because, I don't want to talk about global warming, because I don't even care about global warming. I'm looking at the last 500 million years of the biosphere, and we've had 6 mass extinction level events. And they don't even know, was it a neutron star blow? It seems like everybody that survived was underground, like the mice. So why are we building buildings up when we should be building buildings down? Because if some star explodes, it looks like it just zaps off 95% of the creatures. But we got 6 mass extinction level events we have to deal with. We have pollution. We have, all these things. Anil, I remember when I was with you in Kathmandu, I could tell you were heartbroken when you were showing me the river and there was some trash floating in it. I mean, you saw that trash and I thought you were wounded. And so let's all come together. We have to face viruses. They've been here before the biosphere. That's what connected us. This self-replicating mechanism came out of chemistry. And let's all work together. Let's stop panicking. Living in fear is not an option. I mean, I don't care if you're afraid. Okay, get over it. What's the worst case scenario? You're going to die? Well, heads up. You're going to die anyway. The number 1 cause of death is birth, just like the number 1 cause of divorce is getting married. So if you just don't be born and don't get married, you'll never die and you'll never have to pay $3.8 million for a divorce, but who's counting? So the bottom line is just get over yourself. Get over your fear, go back to work. Half the market is waiting for you, and you're going to make a ton of money if there's 2 businesses you never get into. A business with high capital cost, dentistry, and a business where someone else sets your fees, dentistry. That's dumb. So you already have eaten the cost. Quit letting someone else dictate your fees. Raise your fees accordingly. Slow down. There's a guy in Portugal. A lot of people think he's my twin, this Miguel guy. Have you ever seen this guy? Miguel. Have you seen him with Slow Dentistry out of Lisbon, Portugal? Everybody always confuses. We look seriously just like brothers, like twin brothers. And he's been preaching about Miguel Stanley. Slow down. Slow dentistry. It's not a game of running around 4 chairs because some other person is setting your fees and you have a margin that's only 10, 20%. See one person with a margin for 50%, and you don't have more PPE gear, which is expensive and costly and trash. And just if everybody would just take a breather, relax, slow down, go back to work. And when someone wants to buy a bottle of Coke, they give you $1. They don't run to the government and say, well, how much should I give him for that $1? Well, okay, you give him the Coke and then you bill the government and then we're going to give you 36. Now, forget all that. The government is not the solution. The government is the problem. Go back to being an individual, treat your patient. And when you trade these services, they'll get out their debit card and they'll pay for it. And you're going to be fine. I think we're going to come out of this even better than before.
Thank you, Dr. Farran. I think that is such a beautiful message. Like, do quality dentistry, less patients, but more value, but absolute protection to staff, to yourself, and to the environment, everything. So a holistic approach altogether. Thank you very much for that. And I would like to add one more thing. Mark Zuckerberg, who happens to be a son of Ed Zuckerberg, who's a dentist, who Dr. Farran had interviewed in his video thing, and Mark learned from, what are you guys doing here? And dentists are talking, and that's how one of the ways the Facebook was invented, I guess. And that's such a great thing,
Yeah, Ed told me Mark saw it when he was a little kid, and it's just amazing what Mark has done. I mean, to the speed at which he took this concept and wrapped 2 billion people around the world is amazing. And I think it's amazing. I mean, I have 300,000 followers on Facebook at Howard Farran, but during the pandemic, I stopped using it because I need an index. I can't have repeating messages, last in, first out. It wasn't an organized way. So I haven't posted one time on Facebook since this pandemic. And that's why I'm offering an index service to any other dentist of any other country, because if you want to look up P95 mask, and I know that Neil said something profound about it. I don't have time to go to Neil's page and scroll back for 40 days and 40 nights until that post. I want to go to an index So Dental Town has 6 million posts, but they're all indexed into 50 categories: root canals, fillings, crowns. And if you search P95, boom, PPE, boom, payroll protection plan, boom. So and then what it also does, it gets people to stop duplicating, saying the same things over. Most people, when you look at Dental Town behavior, most people go there, they do a search, they read for an hour, and then they're gone. So they didn't have to ask a follow-up question. It's kind of like FAQs. So if you have a question about a P95 mask and you search P95, you should be able to read every single thing that everyone's ever thought or said about it in an organized manner. And I don't know how you would do that on Twitter or LinkedIn or Instagram. And those are all great things. And all dentists I know are on multiple. Most dentists that I've surveyed have 40 apps on their phone, 40 apps. And I just, on my phone, I just on the cover, I just have, but anyway, so the bottom line is, you know, they're all different things, but I think, Anil, I think your 8,000 members would prefer an index version. And then if someone ever decides that, oh, we're going to take down that video, or we don't like what you said, or whatever, well, it's private property. You should own it. You shouldn't have your whole community on someone else's platform. You should have your home. I knew that at the beginning. When I decided I was going to have an internet community, first thing I decided is I'm going to build it myself. I hired Ken Scott. I hired 5 people. They're still all there: Ken and Angie and Nick and Larry, and you know, and I will cut and paste that, and so you can have it. But again, we just need to get over fear. This is just, I feel like it's Winston Churchill again, telling all the Brits, hey, you have a big problem over here. And they're like, well, we don't want to solve it because someone might die. Oh, someone's going to die. Absolutely. This one, I mean, World War II killed 100 million people, and this virus could kill 2% of the planet. It's horrible. I'm sorry, but I didn't make the coronavirus. Just like when I was a dentist. I'll never forget, I told my oral surgery instructor, I'll never forget this lecture I got. His name's Brett Ferguson, oral surgeon, best oral surgeon in the world, him and Charlie White. And I told Brett, I said, well, I can't go tell this guy he has 11 cavities. And Brett said, why? I said, well, I just can't do that. And he goes, well, did you cause the 11 cavities? Did you know, you're the dentist. You have, it's not your option. You can't be opaque. You have to go tell this person you have 11 cavities. Don't own it. Don't get emotional about it. I didn't cause the coronavirus any more than I caused your 10 cavities, but I am your dentist. And here we are. You have 10 cavities. I know there's a coronavirus out there. What do you want to do? Do you want to sit in your basement until 10 cavities grow into the nerves and now you need 10 root canals? And then you won't have the money, so you'll pull all the teeth, and then hopefully you'll get rich someday that you can afford to go to Anil, and he'll put in 10 implants and all these fancy crowns. I mean, that's an individual decision. So you know, whenever I have a problem, I have never stopped and wondered, well, what would my government recommend? I have always assumed my government is worse than the mafia. They kill people every day. I mean, they're lunatics. They're crazy. They're insane. I'm an individual, and I treat my patient like myself. And if my patient wants to come in and they say it's an emergency, it's an emergency. I'm not looking for the stupid CDC and the World Health, the United Nations. And I don't know why the dentists in Australia all listen to Australian Dental Association, but I know in America, about 1/4 of the dentists don't like the American Dental Association. I kind of look at the American Dental Association like my parents. You would think my parents are perfect because they had me. But the truth is, my parents actually are not perfect, but they're your parents. My mom is crazy. And so obviously I must have taken after my dad. But the bottom line is, you know, they're the only parents you have. So the ADA is your only parent. So if you don't like them, you don't like your mom, you need to tell a psychologist. If you don't like the ADA, you should call a psychiatrist, because they're, you know, they call it the motley fool. Well, of course, all the governments are fools because the people are fools and they're the ones who elected them. So how could a country of fools not elect fools? The government always reflects the people they came from, because it's the same tribe. If a tribe puts forward 100 leaders, well, where did the leaders come from? Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn, they came from your tribe. So of course the leaders are crazy because the crazy tribe elected them. So people are crazy. So we've all known people are crazy our entire life, but it's time to just get rid of the fear. Go back to basic economics. A person wants to come see you for your services because she's 71 and her front tooth fell out. And if the governor Ducey told her that she couldn't fix her front tooth because it's not an emergency room. I was in an emergency room one time in Creighton University, and do you know why one of the patients was in there? Because he had a Coke bottle stuck, not on this end, it was stuck in the other end. I mean, is that on the list of emergencies? I don't know. Does someone put Coke bottle stuck in GI tract? Is that an emergency? I don't have to ask the president of the United States if having a Coke bottle stuck up your rectum is an emergency. I'm not that type of person. I'm an individual person. I'm a doctor of dental surgery. And if you come to my office with a Coke bottle stuck in your rectum, I will make the decision if it's an emergency or not. And you know, the bottom line is just get over yourself, get over your fear, have faith in the human race, have faith in economics, have faith in trade, have faith in not a particular religion, but Neil, I loved how much you taught me about Buddhism and Buddha and all, you know, I just love it because you got 5,000 years of religion and all those thoughts came down to one thing: treat other people like you want to be treated. And I love the namaste because instead of honoring a God somewhere else, I'm honoring the person of you, the God that lives within you. And if you think this is an emergency and you want to come to me and trade me a coin for fixing your tooth, then come on, let's do it right now. And the minute the herd quits listening to the government and starts listening to their heart and their patient's heart, and as soon as everybody gets back to work, and you cannot be paralyzed at a 2% fatality rate. I mean, look at the Russians during World War II. They lost 20 million people on the German front. That generation would have given anything to replace the Germans with the coronavirus. I mean, come on, we've survived so much more tragedy than this, and you better do well on this one because the next one could be so much worse. You are so lucky that this wasn't an H1N1 that came out of poultry. And you're talking about bats. America has poultry farms that are a mile long with millions of chickens all crammed in one place. And the virologists are saying that these are the most dangerous breeding grounds on earth. So we've had pandemics as far back as we can see, and we're going to see them as far as into the future until we put enough money to get it. And for all the money, it took 40 years to get a treatment for HIV. In 60 years, there's been no vaccine for dental decay, gum disease, male pattern baldness, herpes, influenza, or whatever Agim has at the moment. I mean, so we don't know, you know, this is probably going to take us a century or two to get all this under our belt. And we don't have a century or two to hide in our basement. So get over yourself. Living in fear is not an option. Go back to work and listen to your customer and quit listening to your stupid government.
Thank you, Dr. Farran. Thank you for that. Now I'd like to go on to Dr. Agim Hymer. I think he's already 2-3 in the morning, and he's been very kind to be with us today. Agim, please, would you like to add on something to what Dr. Farran just said?
Well, it's very hard to add on to that fantastic line. I could listen to Howard just talking all day long. But in that, Howard, yes, we can ignore the government, we can ignore this, we can ignore that. But the problem with the rest of us is that we're not like the Americans that can go out there and protest that we're going to do avoid corona isolation, because like the Indians would get hit with sticks and there'd be no rules to stop the police hitting them. Us Australians just get huge fines, and they were fining us for driving our kids doing so in that kind of a setup, unless I'm going to go out there and fight my government myself, I suppose we do need to work out what can we do. So I'm happy to share to Anil and the other countries the setups that we do have as to how to operate your practice within certain guidelines and how it did operate. I agree with everything that Howard did say, that it is up to us to decide what is an emergency and what's not an emergency. And so we are lucky that as of Monday, we can just go back and do full dentistry. So I suppose fighting your governments and trying to get them to not fine you and not shut you down and not deregister you, you are going to have to formulate a group that can talk to them and basically tell them what Howard said. We want to go back to work within a structured system. We are an industry that I don't think we've really never spread anything. Like HIV was spread because the dentist deliberately spread it to the patient. So as an industry, like nobody knows how to wear gloves, how to wear masks, how to sterilize, how not to touch a door, how not to sneeze, how to cough. No other industry in the world knows it as well as us, apart from someone that works in an operating theater. Like my daughter was vegan, but I was the only one at home knowing not to touch the chicken and then go and touch the carrot. So as a dentist, we just do that as a standard. So I think it's great that in Australia, they've put us to level 1, whereas the rest of Australia, they haven't opened the economy yet. So I think that's just common sense. Dentists should be allowed to open up. And my suggestion to probably what you were saying, Neil, what do people do? Well, you just have to practice all the best practice sterilization that we should be doing from a day-to-day basis. We have added extra things, like when patients come in, you know, we're doing the distancing at reception now. We've added hand sanitizer everywhere. We have just slowed down the flow in the practice, but we've never been a practice that's been involved with insurances or government schemes at all. So that's always been our model anyway, because I never wanted to follow a model of insurances, and we've been very successful not doing that. So I am happy to share the information so that you can get together. It sounds excellent what Howard has offered also to the to your group, that you're having to formulate a splinter group, because then you can just put all the information there and really start opening up again. And that's what we have to do. And the reason we have been able to open up in Australia is because the Dental Association proved to the government that we're the best ones for sterility. Like we're the same as an operating theatre routinely. So that's why we have been able to open up, and we are lucky in Australia that that's where we're at. But being shut for over a month, the economy is going to be a bit of a mess. We are finding a lot of patients who are still employed are coming in, and the one thing they all want is a clean. They just got their teeth cleaned, all of them. So hygiene already, our hygienists have been, there's another thing, our hygienists have been managing their own appointment books. I told them, you ring your own patients and cancel your own patients, because that's your opportunity to talk to them. And now that you're starting up again, well, you ring your own patients and talk to your own patients and get to know them. And they'll come back because they've been waiting for the hygienist to start up. They don't want to go somewhere else. They don't want to go chase a cheaper fee, because we've never set ourselves up for the cheaper fee part of it. So I'm happy to share all the information that you want. And I think the Nepalese and the Indians just look at the guidelines and, like Howard said, what is an emergency? That's up to us to decide what an emergency is. I think the old lady with the missing front tooth, that to me is an emergency. She needs to smile, especially, you know, she might be on Instagram now. Yeah, so that's what I think.
Thank you again for summing that up. And I think absolutely. I mean, if the guideline is followed from there, you know, like basically what happens in countries like ours is you get into a kind of a soup if you just. You know, so we need some guidance from around the world. But one of the things is, again, it comes to economics. When the economy is not that great and people cannot afford a lot, then
Please try again in a moment.
I think, sorry, that was my CD going off on its own. That's the problem. Anyway, so the cost of sterilization and all that is coming up as a big talk in our community as well. So, but at the it will be costly, but we are doing better also for the patient. So it's a win-win for both, I guess, at the end of the day. And thank you for that. Thank you. And we try to follow as far as possible the guidelines that we can. Thanks. And now I'd like to go back to Dr. Anil in UK. I mean, anything you'd like to add up on and help these dentists out in the world out there? Please unmute.
Howard. Can you hear me now? Yep. It was just fascinating speaking to you and listening to you, Howard. It was really enlightening. I loved your energy and yeah, very, very positive message. Personally, I'm actually very keen to get back, and my practice is actually geared towards the post-COVID era anyway, because seeing 4 or 5 patients in a day is a busy day for me. So just seeing 1 or 2 patients is not unusual. The social distancing in the waiting rooms is not an issue. There are certain things we need to do. I think I'm just a bit maybe disappointed a little in how the response to directions for the profession here in this country has been given, because, as I say, it's at best it's confused. Worst case is the fact that we've not been regarded as an essential service. So we've got friends of mine, professors of restorative dentistry, periodontology, that have been at the school that I teach at, have been redeployed. One of them's even delivering babies at the moment. See, so they're going to different parts of the NHS because the NHS service has just been centered towards these urgent dental care centers, which haven't been organized optimally. But that's not an absolute criticism just of the UK, because I can see that's happening through lots of parts of the world now. The important thing is that we do get back, and the important thing is we also get back with a good staged approach. So the very useful document that Agim sent us from the Australian Dental Association, I thought that was fascinating. There's been a similar document here produced by a friend of mine who, very well written, Julian Perry, who was the clinical director of a large corporate here, on behalf of, I think, the Straumann Company and also for the corporates. But it gives us an idea of how we stage approaches in terms of triaging patients, how we treat them, how the staff treat them, what personal protective equipment we wear, etc., through the different stages of the release of lockdown. So I can see that there's an opening there and that we're keen to get back. So I'm very keen to see what Boris Johnson has to say tomorrow, I believe, which will be, from what I understand, a slow release of the lockdown rather than going straight back now. But I'm also very optimistic as well. I think there is a bright future ahead for us in dentistry, and I just hope that many of my colleagues manage to survive economically through this. And hopefully you manage to learn some lessons for whoever's listening here, and especially guys in India and Nepal, from the likes, especially of Australia. I've learned a lot today, and also from the positive aspects that we're hearing from Dr. Farran. So I'm looking forward to meeting you all again in person at some stage. I'm looking forward to meeting you on a personal and a professional level. And that's about all I can say at the moment. But yes, there's a good vibe out there for me, as I can see, and hopefully for you guys as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Farran, please go ahead. Yes.
The first highly leveraged dental services corporation that went under was in your backyard, Finest Dental. What are your thoughts on COVID-19 and why one of your largest DSOs, Finest Dental, closed down?
It had other reasons. It wasn't a direct result of COVID-19, as far as I'm aware, and that was going on before March the 25th.
So it was unrelated. It just went under.
I'm pretty certain. I mean, I was involved in another large corporate about a good almost 10 years ago, and we know a lot about what's happened with Finest Dental, but I don't know enough to speak authoritatively on it. But I do know enough to know that it wasn't related to COVID-19, as far as I'm aware.
That's what I love about social media. We're over here hearing about this DSO that went under in March, so you think COVID, and then you talk to people. That's good to hear.
It's not going to collapse immediately just after literally a few days of the country locking down. There were problems with the infrastructure and the business model, so well before that. Probably a bit like a Smile Direct Club or whatever, you know. So that's something else that's, well, let's see what happens after COVID.
And another thing about your group of 8,000 dentists, I mean,
not my particular group, I'm a member, but yes, you know, there are many guys, probably a good 15, 20 of them that have done most of the hard work. So all the credit goes to them, but I know them very well.
Yeah, and I'm big fan of Jason. Known him for a long time, in fact. But you're seeing a lot of backlash against these dental associations. I'm glad to hear Australia's keeping their members happy. But you know, when you're tired of getting beat up by an association, it's time to make your own association. And these governments are starting to get fearful because they know if the economy collapses and people are unemployed and they're hungry, they're not going to be happy at all. And, you know, one only has to look at the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Arab uprising. Nobody wants to upset the herd because they can snap on a dime, as you've seen. So I think that the governments they're gonna have to get back to work because they fear the coronavirus way less than a herd of 8 billion hungry, unemployed people who are starting to starve. That's what you should fear. Remember, you should always fear the person the most who has nothing to lose. And one by one, when this person has nothing to lose, you should fear that person. So I think the governments have realized they have to do a 180. Otherwise, the United Nations estimation that 135 million people are going to starve to death is unacceptable. It's an unacceptable consequence of flattening the curve so that grandma and grandpa might live an extra year when 135 million women and children are going to starve to death and go into a depression. I mean, it's just not going to happen. And I guarantee you, the United States isn't going to do that. I mean, I think the United States is looking at this with a choice where they're going to save the hospitals or save the economy. And I already know over half of the people say, well, I got to eat and pay my bills, so I'm saving the economy. And it's a horrible decision, but you can't live in fear and not make a decision. No decision sometimes is better than a bad decision. But right now, I don't think you have any decisions. Life is going to go on.
Yeah, I think, Dr. Howard, you also reinforced the fact of Buddha's theory of impermanence. So nothing is permanent in the world. So let's accept that fact and move on. And at the same time, I guess we build up our immunity. We get our exercise. We get our mental and physical balance in order. And the corona, whatever hits you, I mean, even if you are older, you've been Iron Man a couple of times, you know, I'm sure nothing can happen. But the thing is, we as dentists also, I feel we need to keep our physical and mental balance in order so that when we go out in the practice also, we feel protected. We are protected by our own army inside us. Would you agree to that?
I agree. I agree. It's time to get back to the economy as you know, it reminds me of an old joke. There's a man in Idaho. Most of the potatoes in America are grown in Idaho. And this man is buying potatoes at $10 a pound, and he drives them to Arizona and he sells them for $10 a pound. And a businessman says, well, how do you make money buying potatoes at $10 a pound in Idaho and selling them for $10 in Phoenix? He says, well, on volume. And, you know, dentistry is no longer a game of volume until this pandemic's over. So just, you got your skills. Nobody can take your knowledge away from you. They can take your house and your car, and they can take everything away, but they can't take away your knowledge. And you're a doctor of dental surgery, and 7.5 billion people need a dentist. They haven't changed their diet. I remember the first time I went to India. It's so fun to go to these countries because where I grew up, I don't know why, but I was taught that they were all vegans and they were, you know, so I was thinking I was going to go over there and see a bunch of people eating carrots and celery, and oh my God, they have more cookies. Every single dentist I went and visited, the mom would greet me with a plate of sugar cookies. And I'm like, I think India eats more sugar than anybody I've ever met. And that didn't change. So I know one thing. I've lectured in New Delhi and Kathmandu. Those people are eating sugar, and they're going to cause a cavity, and they're going to call you up and say, hey, you're never going to guess what happened to me, but I ate so many sugar cookies that I have a cavity. And life goes on. They're not going to quit eating sugar. You have 2 months of pent-up demand because for 2 months, none of these fillings got filled. They actually started eating more sugar. And, you know, so my gosh, just get over yourself, eliminate the fear, go back to work. And if you know, just get over yourself.
I have a question for you, Howard. Like I believe, and it's just a theory of mine, that there will be a few dentists that do go bankrupt. So in the end, if you can survive this, then you'll actually, there'll be less dentists again. So we'll be even busier as other practices, you know, can't start up. They can't probably buy all the PPE as well. So I think surviving this is the key, because when things do start up again, there will be a pent-up demand for everything. Do you think there'll be a lot of dentists that'll go down?
Well, the problem with a dentist bankruptcy is our very extremely corrupt government passed a law that when you go bankrupt, you can't bankrupt your student loans. So even if a dentist goes bankrupt, he's still on the hook for $400,000 of student loans. And then the dentists that did hire associates, their volume's down. So the associate is the last person to be hired. So when you're coming out of school looking for a job, you're the last man on the totem pole. And I'm so happy this happened, because I've been saying for 30 years, I got out of school May 11, 1987, and I got my office open September 21, 87, in less than 100 days for no money down. I went to the big shop and I said, I want to rent this 1,000 square foot. And he said, $15 a square foot for 3 years. And I said, no, $20 a square foot for 5 years. And he said, why are you paying me all that extra money? I said, because I don't have any money and you're going to do the build out. You built this whole retail center. You can build out my dental office. So he said, okay. And then I went down to the supply company and I picked out all the nicest equipment. And they said, well, okay, that'll be $85,000. And I said, well, I actually don't have a penny. So why don't you put all that in my office and I'll make payments over 60 months. And at 60 months, you'll be paid in full. And they said, okay. And then I opened up. And my hours were 7 to 7, 7 days a week, until I was netting $20,000 a month cash. And then that's when I started my journey of getting fatter and lazier as time went on. but you're coming out of school. I'm so glad that this kid can't find a job, because not only is he afraid of the coronavirus, he's afraid of herself, of starting her own business. And I watch these kids come out of school and they just go from job to job to job. And by the time they've been out of school 5 years, they've had 5 different jobs and they hated every one of them, because you can't make dentists and lawyers and physicians happy, because you're never going to get 2 doctors to agree on anything. In fact, that's the dumbest argument about global warming, is when they say, well, 95% of all the scientists agree. Okay, well, I can already tell you 95% of the dentists don't even agree that today is Friday. And I'm sure Agim's going to sit there and try to tell us that it's actually Saturday. Agim, what day is it? What day is it, Agim? Yeah, see, he's going to say it's
Saturday.
And I can assure you that today is Friday, and don't ever listen to, usually the bald dentist is the smart one in the room, but if Agim thinks it's Saturday, I can tell you it's Friday. So the bottom line is, I'm going to save you 5 years of job hopping, 5 years of kicking the can down the road. And you know what you should do? You should go open up a 2-operatory office, because it's no longer a game of volume. You don't need 6 chairs. You're not going to do a hygiene check, numb someone up, seat a crown, screw in an implant. You're not going to be running around like a chicken with your head cut off. You only need 2 rooms and you only need 1 employee. And so you can't find a job? Oh, that's great. So go find 500 square feet, go plummet for 2 operatories. Don't do volume insurance. I don't care if the NHS will give you a rose garden if you sign up. I don't need a rose garden. I like cash. And then when someone calls you up on your iPhone, they come in and you come in and we're going to do the x-rays, the exam. If you need a cleaning, we're going to do it then. If you have 4 fillings, and then as far as a game of margin, if someone has 10 fillings and they come in once a month for 10 months, and I got to seat you and dress up, there's hardly any margin. But if I sit down and do all 10 fillings right now in one long appointment, the margin is so high. And Anil knows that, Agim knows that, Neil knows that. And during the pandemic, the volume discounts are dead. Slow down. If you're young and you can't find a job, it's probably the most proof that there is a God. So go work for yourself, because your favorite boss in your whole life is always going to be yourself. I mean, my favorite boss was my father. And my gosh, I worked for my dad for 10 years. And then I worked for myself for 30 years. I still hear his voices saying, he's dead now, but I still hear his voices saying, do you know your numbers? Do you know this? Keep one eye on the customer, one eye on cost. Use your brain to drive down costs so your customer has the freedom to afford to get their tooth fixed. I learned all these lessons from my dad, and you just need to have faith in yourself. And right now what I'm saying is you fear a virus more than life itself. And if I took away the virus, then now you're afraid of yourself, because you just go from job to job for 5 years because you don't have faith in yourself that you can set up an office. And we have 200 years of economic history, from starting with Adam Smith, a Scot, a 32-year-old Scot, who wrote The Wealth of Nations in 1776. And owner operated is the best. It's the gold standard, not employee. And the worst is government. The government always provides you half the services for twice the cost. And that's what scares me about the young generation. They seem to look at the government as like their mom breastfeeding them. And it's like, no, you don't need to have the government breastfeed you your whole life. You need to walk away from that little free milk and have faith in yourself, set up your own damn dental office, and set up 2 chairs, and you're going to live happily ever after, and you're going to make a lot of money, and you're going to do a lot of good. So if this virus killed all the jobs for the young dental school graduates, it's now my favorite virus of all time. So just do it. Just do it. Eliminate the fear, self-employment, go back to work, game over.
I think goes back to Charles Darwin saying it's not the intelligence and the strength that is important, it's the adjusting and adaptability of an individual, of a species that actually survives whenever there is things like these, right? So absolutely, I mean, what you're saying is adjust, adapt, do your own thing, be your own boss, and this is the right time to get your entrepreneurial skills out of yourself and be your own boss and happy like ever after. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to give a floor to Dr. Abhay Lamba once for just to wrap up and give some highlight on India's the situation.
Thanks. You're right. Right now, Indian government is feeding everybody, and we are not starving, or we are right now. Food is there, and everything is fine. So, as I would say, it's get out, start working, and get over with your fear. So you don't have to starve. And so saving a COVID old guy and for 10 guys who are healthy and young dying for it is not worth it. It's a horrible decision, as he said it. Yes, it's absolutely. And we are one of the highly skilled people, and we know our infection control, as Dr. Agim from Australia has already stated that. And we know our job. Okay, every day we do surgery, we know how to maintain infection control. And we are one of the most well-equipped people right now, professionally, who can maintain that infection and hygiene in our offices. And we hardly have to update ourselves. And yes, a little bit here and there, tweaking here, social distancing, maintaining patients. And yes, we don't have a volume patients we treat to. We have from 7, 8 to patient to down to 4 or 5 patients a day. But at least, yes, we can save a lot of our patients with a lot of agony, and as well as we can give some employment opportunity to our staff there. They are not living and they're not starving. They're also creating or stabilizing the economy. As the money starts moving, the economy gets stabilized. And that's the, I think today it is a moment that we have to get over with our fear and get ourselves on our feet and start our job again. And I hope we have to represent to government, and that's what I'm taking from this discussion and debate here, that we have to represent it in the government and say that we are the people who have to decide what is emergency and what is not. We are more equipped to handle the situation, a dental situation, than any a government official. They need to take us in confidence, and then yes, if we go out, we are not like America, that we can just go out and protest against our president. Our police is very well equipped with rods and sticks to take care of our backside if we just walk out, and that's really painful, and we are watching it every day. So I think there's a right way to represent there, and we have a system where it works a bit slow, but yes, definitely works. And right now we are not in community stage, and we are still safe, but lockdown is not the solution. And I think that's the right way to go ahead. Really thanks. And thanks, Neil, for bringing me in this, to bring in the Indian perspective here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lamba. Thank you for that. So basically, in summary, we can say that, yes, the work safely, protocols, I mean, basically safeguard patients, everything, as Howard said, it's not about the guidelines alone. It's about the feeling from inside to protect others, to protect oneself, to protect everything, and like practice safe, of course. At the same time, there are a lot of people out there who need service, and we need to give them. And at the same time, just don't think of volume work, but more of a condensed quality work, which will make everybody happy at the end of the day. I think, have I missed out anything? I mean, please add on so that our young dentists can actually, and this has been such a great thing for, I think, whole of dentistry, because this gives such a great feeling coming out from, a person like Howard, who really we look up to. Thank you very much for that. Please add on if I've missed out anything here.
It was really nice to hear how the world is going, and how in different part of the world, how dentists are looking at it, their perspective. how they think about it. And I think today a lot of Indian dentists will have get the first dose of fear vaccine. I hope so. We'll get on our job.
Yeah, I guess we need to keep like Abhay said, in India and Nepal, like Nepal's status, we have 101 COVID-19 confirmed cases right now, no deaths so far. So, but there's another data which says there are 12,000 people who have a swollen bum. That's another sign of corona. So. So we have to be careful here as well, because we are a little policed state, and we have to avoid the right things. But at the same time, I know, Howard, what a coincidence. You are from Wichita and you're born there, and guess what? One of the American Idol right now is going to be from Wichita, and that guy is a Nepali guy called Arthur Gunn, and that's United States, where anything is possible. Like the American dream possible. And thank you for that. Bringing this Nepali guy to such a great platform like American Idol.
And thank you for all the Buddhism you taught me. Think of all these quotes. The mind is everything. What you think, you become. You only lose what you cling to. 3 things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment. Just quit living in fear. Go back to work. And if you can't do it for yourself, do it for the children. Because my grandchildren, they want to go swimming. They want to go to the park. They got their whole life ahead of them. And if I say, well, actually, we're going to ruin the entire country to save grandpa in the nursing home, well, that's not how we address World War II. World War II, we rounded up 6 million boys and threw them at other humans. That was a grotesque tragedy. Look at the American Civil War. 1 in every 30 Americans died during the Civil War. This is, of all the calamities, I don't want to be living in a civil war. I don't want to be living in World War II. If this is the worst thing that my generation gets, what a lucky generation. A disease with 2% mortality. Come on, it's only been 2 months. This is month 3. Get over yourself. Go back to work. And if you can't do it for yourself, do it for your grandchildren.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. If anybody would like to say anything as a closing remark, I think.
Thank you, Neil.
Howard has said it.
Yes, I think it was beautifully done. Thank you very much.
Neil, if I can give you any advice, I think the 3 bald men on the panel were much better than those 2 guys with all that fancy hair. Next time it should just be only bald men.
That's why you love the hair. Because wise men, we're still kind of struggling there.
You think they'll cure male pattern? Which do you think will be the next vaccine? For dental decay, gum disease, male pattern baldness, or the coronavirus? What do you guys think?
I think they're going to create how to create male pattern baldness.
Well, I hope you're right. That should be the most priority given. Yeah. We all want to look like Anil and Neil when we grow up.
I feel sorry for them. I like being bald. No bad hair days, no showers. I don't have to worry about it. And it's nearly 3:30 in the morning here, and my hair still looks good.
Shiny and bright.
That's right.
And you say your shampoo.
Thanks for putting this together. You've been a leader for Kathmandu for 30 years. Thank you for all that you've done for dentistry from Kansas to Kathmandu. It's much appreciated.
Thank you so much, Howard. You've been our guiding light, and we really look up to you. And thank you. Whenever I've asked, you're just there for us. So thank you very much. Thank you, Agim, also, who's been through. Thank you, Anil. Thank you, Abhay. It's been amazing. Thank you.
And thank you, Agim, for staying with us for so early in the morning, 3:30. Yes, really appreciate that. Thank you.
It's my pleasure to always share. And that's been the benefit of Corona as well. There's been a good side.
Yeah.
You know, I've been able to give all the lectures to Nepal over the past month because I've had a bit more time on my hands. My wife likes me again. So my son reckons I'm a good dad as I could get to go. So there's, you know, forget the economic side. There's been a lot of benefits to just slowing down a little bit and smelling the roses. And I have enjoyed it. I actually have enjoyed it. I was worried about retirement, but now I'm looking forward to retirement because I've gotten a feeling of what it could be like. And it was great. But
Yep.
back to work. Got to go back to work.
Yeah. And thank you for, you know, Agim actually volunteered to give one talk, and we finally made him do 4 talks. So 12 hours of talking, and that is very kind of you to do that. Thank you. Thank you. And, yeah, thank you very much. I've recorded the whole thing, and I'll be putting up in the Facebook and YouTube and everything. There's a little issue with the Facebook Live thingy right now. I have recorded everything, and I'll be putting up in the web, and we'll discuss further. And whenever, you know, we'll come back to you if there is any problem, and I hope you won't mind to share your knowledge. And nice.
You're always welcome.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a great day too. I mean, everybody.
Namaste.
Namaste. Namaste.